Okay, we'll make a semi sort of start. So, as many of you more observant than myself will say, I'm not Jessica Shepherd, that's quite correct. Jessica is stuck on the train and there are train issues. So she won't be able to make it, which is a shame because Jess is an excellent schools, multi-academy trust education, PR, communications and marketing expert. But as Semi explained, up until 12 months ago, I've been working for the Institute for 12 months, my entire career was also schools, multi-academy trust, marketing and communications. I run my own consultancy as well. So I'm really happy to do the session and it'll be great and we can have a chat and try to answer each other's problems. I've whipped through the slides and I can see the direction that Jess is taking, and also there are some good takeaways and things like that on this. I will not be offended if you want to go and do another session. I promise, you know, I really won't mind at all. But I would give my IT 5 years ago to come and do a session like this at this conference. So I promise we'll make it work. Is that okay with everyone?
Yeah.
Brilliant. Okay, super. Thank you. Everyone. We'll shut the door. Okay, super. So, as I said, I'm Chief Commercial, John Brenan, Chief Commercial Officer for the Institute. And it's double shame really because I asked Jess to come and do this session. And because I think that often when we're looking at communications, it gets hoovered up into all the other kinds of business operations stuff that you've always deal with. But my mantra is everything is comms. And so whilst we're concentrating on looking at mitigating falling roles, i.e. tying into the sustainability of your school, comms is holistic. Yeah, and so while we can try to go, okay, let's think about very specifically and intentionally about making sure that our roles are healthy, you can't divorce it from the overall approach. Sorry, just so you know, just explaining to colleagues that I'm not Jess, she's stuck on a train, but I know what I'm doing, I promise. So, what you can't do is only deal with falling roles through comms. You have to deal with the entirety of your organisation so that your messaging is consistent and that someone who's looking to apply for a job in your school or multi-academy trust is receiving the same information about your vision and your values and what it's like to be involved with your organisation. And that's also the same for if you're looking for partners or you're thinking about how can we interact with the local authority more effectively or things like that. So external comms is every email that you write, it is every piece of information, a letter that you write. External comms is also the way you interact with your parents and your children and your students, because all this conveys who you are and what it is. Who you are and what it is like to be at your school. And a lot of this is also then linked into, especially primary colleagues, where so much of word of mouth happens in relation to primary recruitment. You don't have the same mechanisms that you do in secondary recruitment in relation to actions like primary liaison and or action through transition. You can try and get around the nurseries if you can. but so there's all these things to consider, but I do encourage you to look at this as a holistic communications point, and then if you're starting to get your overall communication strategy right, then dealing with actual student numbers will become easier as well. And just start to tell on that one. So, I'm going to do a little bit of reading off the slides, I hope you understand why. But strategic communications builds trust and trust build numbers. So, align every message from the website to a parent email with your voice, your school's core narrative and values. View comms as a leadership tool and a way of promoting your school. Yeah. So essentially Jesse said what I just said, which is good, which proves I know what I'm doing. And it is about this building trust, and that trust builds numbers. And I think if we have got parents in the room, and it's great when you're looking at parental marketing and communications, because often you have your own lived experience as well, and you kind of go, okay, I actually do trust this school, and I trust my children with their safety and their education, etc. So Jess is talking about 7-stage strategic cycle. Number one, identify shifting contexts. That's really, we were chatting before about, okay, so what is actually going on with things like birth rates? I remember when I was in practice that it was a challenge to find out within a school or a multi-academy trust whose responsibility it was within that organisation to know what was coming down the pipeline. And often they would go, oh, well, the local authority tells us, but they get it wrong. And I go, well, depending upon what level of flexibility you can build into, or what level of trust you can build into that data, then it might be better that you actually go and find out yourself, because all this information is available. But that can be a positive and a negative, so a negative and a positive. So absolutely, you can think about falling roles, but also things like, is someone building a housing estate around the corner, etc. So having that eye on your local context is really important. Listen for unspoken concerns, which is a contradiction in terms, isn't it? Actually, you know, how do I listen for unspoken concerns? That's again about intelligence gathering. Again, primary is a little bit easier to pick up on this, because you can do the playground and the school gates.
The anonymous post on Facebook.
Well, which, so I'm going to get on to about social media and or the use of WhatsApp. But that unspoken concerns is absolutely about trying to work out who your influencers are. The best comedy come out of UK for 10 years is Motherland. And if anyone hasn't seen it, do go and watch it, it's brilliant. And there's a lady in there called Amanda, and they're just doing the second series of Amandaland as well. But she's the archetypal WhatsApp group running, intensely competitive mum, and they capture that character and that trope really well in that show. But if you can get influencers on side, then that's very helpful. And if you can identify parents who are unhappy but don't come into school to talk to you about that and prefer to take to social media, then however you can reach those people and listen to what they're saying is really, really important. Audit and adapt communications, and audit's really important here, and also revise a strategic marketing plan. It's just treating marketing and comms like any other policy and process that you review regularly. And if you have a normal review cycle for your policies and your strategies, absolutely put it into that. But it absolutely is something that needs to be so agile and so flexible that it is that balancing act between having that strategy in place but knowing that you might just need to flex every now and again. Sharpen your school narrative. So that goes back to the original point about who are you, what are you, what is the narrative that you wish to build around your organisation. That is yours to control. You've got to control your own narrative. And as soon as other people start to control your narrative, then that is a bad thing, because then you can no longer get on the front foot and say, here is who we are, and be very definitive and definite about it. If you are definitive and definite about who you are and what your vision and values are, and that you can prove, if you see what I mean, that everything that you do is in line with your vision and values, then you can survive quite a lot of criticism. Because at the end of the day, people might say, I don't agree with this thing X, And you go, well, it's completely in line with our vision and values. And so, from a communications point of view, we don't really care what you think. We're not going to change what we do based on your narrative, because this is our narrative. Quite a lot of, when we come to talking about parental comms, I'm still close to a couple of multi-academy trusts, and one's had an absolute nightmare this week. And depending upon what the style of leadership is like in your organisation, sometimes people can start to bend with the wind a little bit too much and think, I want to solve this problem, and by agreeing with the person and making mitigations, then it will make the problem go away more quickly. And you know, as the saying is, you've got to sometimes, you know, bite the frog, and you just stick to your guns. So craft your narrative, craft your vision and values, stick to it, don't bend. Use recent data, testimonials, and timing, absolutely. And again, comms, like any other discipline within your school multi-academy trust, should be data driven. Everything that you do should be data driven, and that includes comms. So obviously there's, we've been talking before about birth rate data, but also keep an eye on things like local demographics. Keep an eye on how much money people do or don't have. You know, because again, this is also about crafting your narrative and making sure that your messaging is accessible and intentionally so. But also the data that sometimes floats around schools, around levels of deprivation, SCN, etc. That's incredibly useful from a marketing and communications point of view as well. So really become data harvesters and align your people behind the messages. So in theory, if you are an organisation that's got its vision and values sorted, then everything that your people are doing should be in line with your messaging, because your messaging is rooted in your vision and values, and their actions are rooted in your vision and values. However, people are people, and we all know that and they're not robots, you know. And even if you're from the most heavily branded multi-academy trust going, people are still people. So talk to your people about what you're saying out in the real world, and get them to understand what it is that you're saying out in the real world, but also make sure that they then can react and go, well, yeah, but we don't actually do that, or that doesn't seem to me to align with what we are doing. Because often, believe it or not, marketeers can lie, or they can certainly paint the brightest picture of what an organisation does, and it's got to reflect reality. Because marketing is one thing, the lived experience of a parent or a child is another. And it's very, very, very easy for a parent to walk into a school and go, this does not feel like what I was sold. Which is why open events are really important, but the right way to do an open event is also really important. Identify shifting context. So, demographics, birth rates, housing patterns, transport links. By the way, all the slides will become available, but please take photographs as you wish. Competition. Are nearby schools just expanding, rebranding, or changing leadership? It's a market. You know, we live in a marketised state school system. Whether we agree with that or don't agree with that, that is the situation. And to a certain extent, I would encourage you all not to be naive, and encourage your leaders not to be naive that next door are going to play nice. Because when the chips are down, and we're talking about whether one school's going to survive against another school, then it's nice if a collaborative conversation can occur. It might be better to think about, for instance, merging two schools, etc., etc., etc. But people get very cagey about that kind of thing. And sometimes we'll go, no, we're going to absolutely scrap for every kid, and we don't care if you close because of it. So many stories of, I didn't think Bob would do that. Yeah, of course Bob's going to do that. Perceptions, what's being said informally at the school gate, on social media and in local forums. don't, again with your leaders as well, don't overreact. So, and I think there's still schools out there that will say, we don't have a Facebook page because we don't want to encourage parents to go onto our Facebook page and slag us off. Which is totally upside down thinking. Because, again, going back to crafting your narrative and controlling the narrative, you need to have, and especially primary colleagues, Facebook's fantastic. It's absolutely brilliant. So, you can take everything with a pinch of salt on social media. People go and moan on social media because they want to moan on social media. People will go, I'm going to go on social media if they don't get their own way. I'll take you back to, fine, you go and moan, because everything that we've done is in line with our vision and values, and we don't really care what you're going to say, etc. But don't ignore it, and certainly go, okay, so where is this coming from? Is it an identifiable problem? Is it something that we've actually not got right in school? And how can we deal with this? And that's, again, back to influencers and also back to identifying people and then inviting them in to school. You know, you said this, you know, why did you say that? And treat them like human beings. Priorities. Have parents' expectations shifted? There's a whole different mindset now in relation to what parents expect from schools, I believe. Or certainly a vocal minority have got a different set of expectations. So they often over-expect to a certain extent and under-trust, and are very quick to go on social media and say that their expectations have not been met anymore. And that's hard to be dealing with, but again, if you're dealing with that, you're not on your own. I'm sure that we see that everywhere in society. And it's an ongoing conversation, isn't it? You know, it's linked to attendance. Why attendance rates are so low? Because parents have got different expectations and place different value on school-led education now, post-COVID. So, marketing and communications in itself as an act of raising trust, never mind about falling roles or making sure that you've got enough kids, I've got a massive part to play in how we start to re-engineer that contract, I guess, between schools and parents. But it's going to take quite a long time, and I don't think that we'll never get back to what used to happen pre-COVID or even 10 years ago, which is not an old man moaning about social media, I promise. But it's like when we were talking about in the AI session before, it's a new world. You know, we're just going to flex and adapt with how people react, and we can't necessarily get that square peg back in that round hole. Oops, sorry. So, listening from Jess, brilliant. She's got some great examples here of listening for unspoken concerns. How can we start to chip away at this? Exit interview. So, if a child is going to be withdrawn by the parent for reasons, make sure we understand why. Focus groups with prospective parents and carers, staff insights from daily interactions, governors and trustees, social listening, online and offline, community partners. So again, I used to say when I was in practice is, as a school, you need to be completely outward facing in everything that you do. You need to be wholly connected into your community with a big C community. So everyone involved, whether you want to call them stakeholders or whatever, you've got to look outwards, or else you just don't know what space you're playing in. Audit and adapt. So seek your school, trust as your families do. It's worth doing some surveying. It's also worth looking at surveying in general. So if you're doing things like a Jurio, staff wellbeing, asking your own staff what their view of your school and trust is really important, and asking parents as well. It's not a problem to say, you know, do you trust us? You know, rate us on a scale of 1 to 10, how we think you're doing with your children, etc. Are your key messages consistent across all your channels? That's nailing it at SLT and knowing that all the different people who communicate externally from your school are being informed and led in a consistent way, so that when we get down to the level of a pastoral coordinator for year 10 emailing, are they emailing in a way that is in line with your vision and values, and are they consistent with communications policy? Are they spelling things correctly? Do they have good grammar? Etc. Should they be using ChatGPT to compose emails, etc. But you nail that at SLT because you nail it with all those section leaders as well. Are you focusing effort where comms has the greatest impact? Reassign efforts to the highest value touch points, such as staff interactions, website, open date, newsletters. Don't waste time doing stuff that doesn't work. But to know that stuff doesn't work, you need to look at it, you need to audit it, you need to review it. And also you might need to prove that things do work as well, depends upon what the view is of external comms within your organisation. Because going back to that, we're never having a Facebook page, you're going to need to build evidence to say why this needs to happen. So, do teachers discuss, you still use the word waggle, what a good one looks like. So if there are competitor schools or partner schools that are doing things like social media, communication with the parents really well, just go, they're doing it really well. You know, they don't have, or they've got less problems, or things like that. But, and also think about ways in which you get value for money. So doing Facebook and social media really well is essentially free, if we're not talking about paid for advertising. But who within your organisation has got the right skill set to be able to do this? Do a quick poll. Hands up who's head teacher, especially in primary colleges, or indeed hands up who's you think is the appropriate person doing comms in your school. Does everyone have the right person, do you think, doing comms in your schools or trusts? Yeah?
I don't think we do. Our deputy does it.
Yeah, right.
And she's close to retirement.
Yeah.
So her skills aren't
No.
great in that area generally.
No.
I mean, my skills are, I'm not big on social media, but she does it because, but for us it's also a control thing. So it's making sure that the right things are posted and in the right way, because it was opened up before, but then we restricted it back to one person does it.
Yeah. And then that goes back to, if I can ask the question, why was it retracted?
What, for too many people doing it?
Yeah.
Oh, I mean, I wasn't involved in it, but it was along the lines of, you know, possibly grammatical errors going on there, which doesn't look great. Too many posts of certain things, double posting of things, you know, I think there's a few things. And then it was made the decision that actually we can't afford to get it wrong. So the easiest thing was to strip it back and just have one person do it.
Yeah. Thank you, Nick.
I've had a conversation the last few weeks. One of my schools, the head said I want to give all of my class teachers unrestricted access to the website. So they can post for their class, they can put information out, and I said, absolutely not. I said, what checks and balances are you putting in? Well, I trust them, they're teachers. Well, that's the first mistake. And I said, no, and I really put a business case together and say, no. I said, they can contribute, put some information together, but if you can train someone in the office that really knows the ins and outs of the website, can check it, make sure it's in the house style. I said, I'd rather have one person spending half an hour a week doing all the class updates and checking quality assuring rather than delegating that. He said, what about delegated leadership? So it's a really difficult job.
Yeah, completely. But then if we examine that quickly, I would say, why on earth you put it, so is that website updates for class activity on a public website?
Yes.
So,
Why?
number one, why?
Exactly.
Because what other communication methodologies do you have where you can communicate with parents privately? So, or at least a class privately, so that then you are worrying less about some of that unintentional public scrutiny. So, class charts, dojo, all the ways in which to communicate with parents. Going back to that holistic approach, I urge everyone to go back and look at doing a communications chart. about all the systems that you use, from email to phone, from website to whatever MIS you're using. If you know, what is your communication framework? What does it look like? And is it a mess? And do you know what you put through what channel and why? And are those people properly trained? Are you duplicating? Have you actually found a system that you prefer to X to system Y? Have you stopped subscribing to system Y? And all that. It's all on text. Yeah,
There's also another great win in that, is you can box off data protection activity and fixing your information asset registry if you haven't got one, or registry processing activities, because if you've got that, start there, see where your data's flowing. If you haven't got it, use it to create one.
Yeah.
That's what we've just done with our schools.
Yeah. So bringing it back to marketing, because but you can see, can't you, we're expanding and contracting all the time. We're talking about a large information communication data landscape that this is part of. And so again, you know, it's bringing it then back into, okay, so what are we doing very specifically and intentionally around getting more kids? So Jess has got this Oasis acrostic, which is great. Objective, audience, strategy, implementation, scoring, and evaluation. What do we want to achieve? And link it to your school improvement or trust strategy. Okay. Who are we trying to reach? What do they think, feel, and need from us? What approach will deliver the biggest impact with the resources we have? How will we deliver it? Who does what? And through which channels? How will we know it works? Measure, review, and refine each term. Again, marketing is no different in schools. We're doing that because we did it last year. And we always do that. We always put the banner in that place. It's always a banner of 2 metres by 1 metre. What would happen if you moved it and you did a metre that was 5 metres by 1 metre? Oh, well, we don't do that. So, you know, again, review, break with past customer practice for past customer practice sake. Keep on doing it. I'm going to steal that myself. That's a really great way to think about it. Defining school narrative. So, this is what we were talking about earlier. Clarify, identifying purpose, show confidence in the future, allow everyone to say it in their own words. And that third one's really interesting about, again, back to that perhaps over authoritarian approach that sometimes we get. And it's a little bit like we've just been talking about the deputy head in relation to the worry about, I mean, don't get grammatical errors aren't great, but lack of control. But yeah, I think it's good. But example of the core narrative there. But then, as we've said, you need to support that. You can't just say that. You've got to show it. And and it's interesting, if that's what you want to be and you can't prove it, then you've probably got some fundamental issues in relation to who you are as an organisation. And that's why comms is everything. Because at the end of the day, comms is only the reflection on who you are as an organisation. And if you're not very good, and you can't prove the things that you think should come to a school relatively easily, then you've got some fundamental issues going on in your organisation. Data, testimonials and timing. Pairing data with powerful stories, be transparent and contextual when using data. Use voices from a wide range of your community. Parents, carers make decisions in cycles. Keep your best stories for key decision-making times. That data thing I think is about performance data. And it'll be interesting also in terms of offset judgments and how that's going to work out now, where there's no single word judgments. Which, if you got a good or outstanding, you used to love single word judgments. If you didn't, you used to hate single word judgments. Oh.
It's really interesting. I met with Ofsted presented to our heads and chairs last week, and they talked about the new report card, and they talked a lot about what the parents expect, how can we make the 5-point scoring more accessible to parents, how do we get rid of some of the language they're using. I've said, well, RI is just going to, needs and intention is just going to come with the RI. You're just changing the wording.
Yeah.
But still, we've got the new drag race and new colours, and it's this and that, the other. I'm thinking.
You put it in front of someone cynical like me, as a school marketeer, and it will get whipped up into. I will make it really accessible really quickly, and it will probably say something like outstanding, and it will probably be green, or a lovely colour that that is great, you know, it certainly won't be read. You know, that's what will happen. And it's because...
It's great example here, John. There's a school near us, Catholic High School, and they just had their CSI inspection, and they've got outstanding in the CSI. And the school, all over their knees, we're an outstanding school. And the whole community's talking about they've got Oxford outstanding. And a couple have gone, no, they're doing great in the Catholic world. That's the message, that's the narrative, controlling the narrative. And suddenly the school is all over the local press, the big papers are picked up on it, and it's a masterstroke from the school, absolute masterstroke.
And parents will hear what they want to hear as well. But yeah, it's interesting stuff. And that last one about keep your best stories for key decision making times. And that presupposes that you've got an effective news gathering methodology and system within your organisation as well, which suggests that you need to know, people need to know what's going on in your school. The size of the school can have real issues around that. But it comes down to comms is like health and safety. It's everyone's job. And drilling that into pedagogical staff can be hard. I think that, careful how I say this, but as the age profile of pedagogical staff starts to shift, or indeed people who, you know, or becoming people more connected with comms, people are more comfortable with comms generally, because comms is part of everyone's sort of life. Everyone's on Instagram pretty much. You know, everyone understands that they're being marketed to and how they're being marketed to. So if you are struggling with pedagogical staff understanding about why comms is important, you can just talk to them about, well, you know, you know, I'm sure that you will get emails from, or Instagram posts from, or, you know, whatever your interest is, whatever your hobby is. So, you know, comms is everything to everyone anyway. So hopefully they can make that mental shift in that it's their part of their job as well. Example of theming comms. So Jess has just popped up there, you know, like a proto calendar, really, you know, so that you can have, you know, like a starter for 10 in terms of at least some intentionality about divvying up this stuff. Schools run on calendars, don't they? Do you know what I mean? And so I used to say to the schools, it's really easy to do a comms calendar in a school because you've got a calendar, you know, and everything. You know, one of the big jobs was 1st of September is the calendar done. So it's one of the most, in theory, well-planned places that you can get. And so laying comms on top of that should be relatively straightforward. There's lots of shoulds and relatives there because I know I've tried to do it and it can be an absolute nightmare. But the point being is that the raw materials are there. Oh, this is good. 3 consistent talking points. So this is around aligning people behind the messages. So it's giving staff and also key staff who are in connection with the outside world, give them a script. You know, say, yeah, 3 consistent talking points. We are going to talk about A, B, C. We've got 3 really strong things about our school. We're going to talk about those 3 things. Shared tone and language, staff as reputation ambassadors. That last point is also interesting. I was at an open evening for a 6th form for my son, and it's a school 6th form, it's a large school 6th form, separate site from the main school, and my son's interested in doing DT. So we go and see the DT teacher, and the first thing he said was, yeah, down here at the 6th form college you don't really have good facilities.
Cool.
The facilities are up the road, out the other school. It's a shame we used to have good facilities, but they wouldn't pay for them anymore, and now that's another classroom. And it's like, what on earth are you saying? You know, and there's many other examples of that, I'm sure. And also, staff as reputation ambassadors, yeah, don't moan in the pub. You know, and that's really, really key. And it's going into staff talking about some stuff to do with things like Nolan principles, and saying, you know, you're in public service, you know, so you need to adhere to Nolan principles, and actually making them aware of what that means, so that at least you've told them. And so if you do hear them slagging someone off down the pub, you know, then you've got recourse, you know, and they've been trained in this sort of thing. Key principles for successful comms, so clarity and coherence. Parent carers know what communications to expect and where to find them. And I would absolutely add to that, do the minimum, don't do the maximum. Because again, if you've got parents in the room, it can, you know, ping, 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 school again, school again, school again, school again. So, you know, it's a hard balancing act to do in relation to daily comms about, you know, non-uniform day, this, that and the other. But the flip side to that, and when I say do the minimum to be effective, and the minimum to be effective might actually totally be that you have to over-communicate. Because demographics are different, different styles of parenting exist. So yeah, it's hard, and I'm not saying that it's not hard, it's a really hard balance to strike. Two-way comms, make sure you're listening to your parents and carers and consulted regularly as well as informed. Respect and trust. It was fascinating, wasn't it, in the AI conversation where a gentleman, Matthew Clement Wheeler, said they had run an exercise in the school that he was working with where they simulated a freedom of information request about what parents were perhaps entering into AI prompts to help them craft communications. And the prompt, for instance, could be how to write a letter to a difficult parent. And then we were saying, okay, so what would happen if a parent who requested that understands that they're being branded as difficult? And that speaks to this, respect and trust. Because in theory, there are no difficult parents. There are parents who may have concerns that we need to understand where they're coming from and think about how we can make sure that they feel listened to, or they are listened to, and we are working hard to deal with their dissatisfactions. Doesn't mean we get bendy and roll, but it means that we're respecting what they are saying.
Can I just ask a question on that? Because we have the minority, but we've got some parents that are continual, and they actually, you open a two-way communication and then it's relentless and it doesn't end. So is there any advice from communications where we could put out to all parents to be, you know, you have to understand the size of the school, the amount of parents, we can't, you know, certain parents take up so much time and want so much back in that two-way communication that it takes it away from other parents that might actually need that more so.
And indeed are quieter.
And are quieter. So we've been trying for a long time to try and get out there to be like, you know, can't, by all means we're open, but just to that very small minority, like think about how many messages you're sending in, how many emails, how many requests or complaints or just grumbles, and it's how you stop that two-way communication going too far there, the parents' side.
Very much so. Thanks, very much.
We have that in our parent conduct document though. So we actually have around appropriate communication, and we do occasionally, we did just this last week, have to bring that out and have a meeting with that parent and say, look, you need to understand that obviously we are wanting to facilitate communication, but
It's
the level is now
It's
incredibly
quite a lot.
disruptive.
Yeah, it'd be great to have a look at that.
Yeah.
Yeah, brilliant. If you can root it in policy, then you can root it in vision and values. And especially in the parent conduct, which is essentially a contract in relation to, you need to understand that this is what it's like to be at this school. If you don't like that, although I know this is about footballing rounds, but if you don't like that, then you don't like that. Linked to a session that we were doing yesterday, one of our lawyer colleagues was doing a session around AI authored vexatious complaints. That just go on and on and on and on and on, and it's linked. But this again is about, if we're saying how does this affect how we market for children, then what hard choices do we need to make? You know, so would we ever turn around and say, you're going to need to take your child out of school, or, you know, if you don't like it, off you go, if that £5,000 to £7,000 per annum is, you know, a hugely big issue for you. So, you know, but then you're back to how much do I compromise on my standards and on my policies and on my vision and values to do this?
And that family has a knock-on effect to other families, and other families leave unless that family leaves.
Yeah.
So you end up losing out even more, so you may as well play hardball with one family and keep your numbers up.
Yeah.
We've had mass exodus on occasion just out of one family. Yes.
We just hold firm on our expectations. We have expectations for our pupils, we have expectations for our staff, we have expectations for our parents.
Yeah.
You know, and we are in education, that's perfectly acceptable to have that line.
Yeah. Because you're not a service industry,
No.
but we're here talking about marketing, and we're here talking about parental choice, so you are a service industry. Because choice exists, and where choice exists, it puts pressure on us to perform in certain ways, which in theory is a good thing, because it means that practice and the ability to want to be good on whatever judgment or KPI that you're doing, in theory drives educational standards up. But it's a whacking great in theory, because, you know, when we look at markets, when we look at jurisdictions that don't have choice, then does that mean that standards are poor, particularly? So it's just the way that these things are structured and framed, often. Sorry, I'm only because we're nearly at time and don't even know how many slides we've got left. Follow through and feedback. Schools demonstrate that listening leads to prompt action. Ish. Now, but that prompt action might be no. But, you know, so it's not a bad thing to set yourself some service standards and go, we want to reply to, and I don't mean your formal complaints procedure, but if a normal message comes in, how quickly do you, as an organisation, want to get back? Notwithstanding 38 million WhatsApps from Karen. It is nearly at the end. So please take a photograph of this, but as I say, it is on the you will get these. So Jess has done some useful resources and next steps. For parent listening guides, strategic marketing plan template, Oasis model review, Agirio benchmarking tools, and DFE guidance on parental engagement. So do have a good look at those and use them. And that was Jess and Q&A, and that's Jess's email address. So please do reach out to Jess and say that you enjoyed her presentation. She's a lovely person, she's incredibly skilled, she used to work for The Guardian and is a really good marketer and communicator. She wouldn't be allowed to say this, but I'd buy from her, I would buy her services. So please do consider listening, thinking to Jess, talking to Jess about that. But she's also incredibly generous, so if you wanted to reach out and ask her advice, then she will be totally and utterly happy to talk to you, I know that. But we've got a few minutes. I'm really happy to answer any questions you've got about, especially the very spiky end of marketing for students, in terms of, you know, do you all have marketing budgets assigned? We've got Nation going yes. We've got people going yes.
Marketing executive.
Yeah, so and it's interesting then, so if I could ask, how much is that marketing budget?
So because we always do some sort of like boss marketing and things like that every year, we've been doing it for the last couple of years, we've actually put aside 5,000 because we said that's one pupil money.
Secondary, is it?
No, it's primary.
Primary. Very good. Yeah.
One pupil, that's all we
Yeah.
need. We get two, we've made it.
It's a good way of thinking,
Yeah.
actually.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And that again was when I was helping people build marketing strategies. It was, you know, divided by and how many kids do you need. And so the thing is that if the school's not open because there's no kids, then there's going to be no money to spend on anything anyway. You know, and yeah, there's an element of risk attached to marketing spend, but being cross about having to market, which often is we shouldn't have to market, we shouldn't have to put aside £5,000, that £5,000 would be better spent doing X, Y, Z. Yeah? But we are where we are. So that justification in terms of, however, positive justification, if we make this investment and it realises 5 times £5,000, then you're 20 grand up.
I think it's a thing of if it does, isn't it? So we do have marking budgets for each of our schools, which differs depending on where the pupil recruitment is.
Brilliant.
But we've done things like roundabouts for many, many years now, and we did a survey at the open evening. Why have you come? Where have you seen us? About 2% saw them on the roundabout because you just stopped seeing them, and they were really expensive. And what actually we've said basically is the more familiar you are, whether it's our primaries or secondaries, the more familiar your school is. So what they appreciated more was the year 5 days, that coming up to our school from year 5, and actually that time's probably better spent getting some cover in for our staff than putting roundabout signs. 2 or 3 years time we might go back and have a year's worth of roundabout where people see them again, but it really focuses on, like say, how we make our schools familiar. So how do we get our 1 and 2 year olds through the door to a primary school so that this is my school, I'm going to come here, so that the parents know that rather than seeing a sign, if that makes sense. But for some, we've got signs, banners, we all over.
Yeah, I mean, we do go to, like you said about going to the nurseries. Our early year teacher goes around to all our local nurseries and does all of that.
And I think
invite the local nurseries to come in and see our reception, Christmas plays, things like that. We do all of that sort of
It's
thing.
definitely trying to get the families in, isn't it? So making the school a community hub where it just feels normal for them pupils.
And then often, if you can do, the more open you can make a school, and also if you can make some money off the back of it in terms of your lettings policy and your letting strategy, that's also great, because they wander through and go, well, hopefully go, oh, this is a lovely school, it's well maintained, and the children who I have bumped into have been very polite, etc. So all those things, and again, stress because obviously primary liaison year 5, year 4 days are like gold dust. But if you can replicate that in primary as well, yeah, great. That's a really, really good plan. And doesn't cost anything in inverted commas. Yeah, staff time. You might need a bit of cover. But having consultation with your community to say what kind of things do you want, then it might be that you can use TAs because it might be to do with some cooking or things like that. So you can get creative that way. Any other questions or? Am I right? I think this finishes at 5 past.
Yeah.
Thanks for your patience. Thank you so much, and I hope it was okay. I really enjoyed talking to you. It's like a blast from the past. It's like the old days.